Page 7, that is where he stops. Not page 1, where somebody summarized the conflict in 3 neat paragraphs. Not page 3, where your silence was labeled avoidance. Not page 5, where someone wrote that you had become withdrawn, difficult to reach, emotionally flat. Page 7, halfway down, 1 sentence. He reads it once, then again. His thumb stays on the corner of the paper. Someone across the table asks, "What?" He does not answer right away. He looks back at the previous page, then forward to page 8, checks the date, checks the sequence, then he says it. This isn't fear. Silence. Someone asks, "Then what is it?" He closes the file. They're done. And that is where the whole story changes. Because fear and being done can look almost identical from the outside. Both can be quiet. Both can pull away. Both can stop arguing. Both can make a person harder to reach. But they are not the same thing. Fear is still negotiating with the threat. Done has stopped negotiating with the room. That is what page 7 showed. Not some dramatic breakdown, not a screaming match, not a confession, a change in pattern. You stopped asking what they thought. That was it. Before page 7, almost every decision in the file had a shadow attached to it. What will they say? Will they be angry? Will they think I am selfish? Should I explain this better? Maybe I should wait. Maybe I should give it 1 more week. Maybe they did not mean it like that. Maybe I am overreacting. Maybe I am remembering it wrong. You know those questions. They can build a cage without a single lock. Then page 7 arrives. The questions disappear. Not all emotion. The questions. You still hurt. You still lost sleep. You still replayed things. But somewhere in the middle of all that, you stopped requesting permission to believe your own experience. That is why the reviewer stopped. Because everybody else had been reading your quietness as fear. He read the timeline. Fear does not usually look like that. Fear circles. Fear checks the door. Fear sends the message and stares at the screen. Fear leaves and comes back. Fear blocks someone at midnight and unblocks them before breakfast. Fear makes a decision and immediately asks 10 people whether the decision was allowed. You had done all of that before. That is what makes page 7 different. You stopped circling. You did not suddenly become fearless. You became finished. There is a difference, a huge one. People think being done is loud because movies taught them endings require a speech. Real endings rarely do. Real endings happen while somebody is folding laundry, driving home, standing in a grocery aisle, sitting in the parking lot before work. Nothing cinematic. Your brain just stops offering new arguments. That is one of the strangest feelings in the world. The problem is still there. The person has not changed. The history is not repaired. But your mind no longer produces another plan. No new explanation. No new angle, no new fantasy about finally being understood. The machine simply stops printing. That is page 7. They thought you were afraid because you stopped fighting. No, you stopped feeding something that had eaten enough. Let's go back. Because the reviewer did. He wanted to know what happened before the sentence. He looked at page 1. There you were, still explaining, still trying, still giving people the benefit of the doubt long after the benefit had become debt. You were careful with language, painfully careful. You did not want to accuse. You did not want to sound dramatic. You did not want to become the thing they already claimed you were. So you softened everything. That bothered me. When it crushed you. I just need some space. When you needed a different life. I understand where you're coming from, when where they were coming from had been running you over for months. You were polite while drowning. People called that maturity. Sometimes it was. Sometimes it was fear wearing good manners, fear of conflict, fear of losing people, fear of becoming difficult, fear of having your pain used as proof against you. You had learned to present pain like a lawyer, calm, organized, with exhibits, because raw pain had never been safe. If you cried, you were unstable. If you raised your voice, you were aggressive. If you went quiet, you were manipulative. If you walked away, you were avoidant. Beautiful little system. Every exit led back to the same verdict. You. So you got better at explaining. That was the trap. You thought better language would produce better treatment. Sometimes it does. With decent people it does. With people who care, clarity helps. With people who are committed to misunderstanding you, clarity becomes free material. They learn your fears, your weak points, your exact definition of disrespect. Then somehow the same thing happens again, just slightly differently. Enough difference to restart the debate. That cycle is exhausting in a way sleep cannot fix. The reviewer sees it all over pages 2 and 3. Conversation, apology, repeat, boundary, testing. Conversation, apology, repeat. It looks almost mechanical. Then something changes. You start using fewer words. That is the first clue. The old messages are long, paragraphs, context, examples, effort. Then they get shorter. Okay, I understand. No, I'm not doing this again. People hear those sentences and think cold. The reviewer sees compression. That is what happens when a person has already explained the full version too many times. Short language is not always lack of feeling. Sometimes it is feeling after it has finished proving itself. You had said enough. More words were not going to create a different listener. So the paragraphs died. That bothered them. Of course it did. Your explanations had been useful. When you explained, they could argue with your wording. When you gave examples, they could debate the examples. When you described how you felt, they could tell you the feeling was disproportionate. Your openness gave the conversation handles. Then one day there were no handles. No. How do you debate that? I'm leaving. What paragraph do you attack? I heard you. What loophole is hiding there? There isn't one. The reviewer underlines that pattern, not because short answers are always healthy, because these short answers came after years of long ones. Context matters. It always does. Page 4 is where everybody else in the file thought the fear began. You started disappearing, fewer calls, less contact, less information. You stopped showing up where you knew you would spend the entire night monitoring the mood. You stopped volunteering personal details to people who treated information like currency. You became hard to reach. They wrote down avoidance. The reviewer asks a different question. What did your life look like outside those people? That is where the label starts falling apart. You were still working, still answering people you trusted, still laughing, still making plans, still functioning. You were not withdrawing from life. You were withdrawing from a specific environment. That is not the same thing. A person who stops touching a hot stove is not afraid of kitchens. They learn something about the stove. Simple. But people personalize boundaries. If you stop coming to their house, they do not ask what happens in the house. They ask what is wrong with you. If you stop telling them things, they do not ask how they handled the things you told them before. They call you secretive. If you stop answering instantly, they do not ask why every urgent conversation somehow became your emergency. They call you distant. People are very creative when access disappears. Page 5. This one is ugly, not because of what they did, because of what you did. You went back. Yeah, there it is. You went back after saying you were finished. You answered the call. You listened to the apology. You let nostalgia perform surgery on your memory. You wanted the good version to be real again. That does not make you weak. It makes you human. The reviewer doesn't romanticize it. He notes something more important. When you went back, you did not go back the same way. You watched. That is new. Before, hope did most of the seeing. Now pattern did. You listened to the words, then waited for the next week, the next inconvenience, the next moment where saying no cost them something. That is where people reveal change, not in apologies, in friction. Anybody can sound evolved when the room is calm. Character becomes visible when the answer is no. When you are tired, when you cannot help, when you disagree, when you stop being easy, that is what you watched. And there it was. Same pattern, different packaging. That hurt more than the first time. Because the first time, you could still blame confusion. The second time, you had data. That is page 6, the final attempt. You tried one more conversation, not because you were afraid to leave, because part of you needed to know there was nothing left to misunderstand. You said it cleanly. No attack, no performance. You described the pattern. You described the cost. You described what would have to change and what came back. Not curiosity, defense, not repair, explanation. Not I understand. A lecture on why your understanding was wrong. That was the last turn. People imagine the last straw is always the worst thing. Usually it is not. Sometimes the last straw is tiny, almost embarrassing. A sigh, an eye roll. One sentence, a joke at the wrong time. The last straw is not heavy because of itself. It is heavy because of what it lands on. Years. That is what people never see. They look at the final event and say, "You left over that?" No, you left after that. Different sentence. Page 7 begins the next morning. No explosion. That is why the reviewer stops. The notes say you woke up, went to work, did what you had to do. You did not send the message you had drafted the night before. You deleted it, not angrily. You just looked at it and thought, there is nothing in here they have not already heard. Delete. Then another detail. You stopped checking whether they were online. Another. You stopped asking mutual people what they were saying. Another. You stopped rehearsing the defense. Another, you slept. Not perfectly, but differently. There, that is what he saw. This isn't fear. Fear is still oriented toward the thing it fears. Your attention had begun moving elsewhere. That is what done looks like. Not hatred, direction. Your energy changed direction, back toward your own life. At first, barely. You cleaned something, you returned a call, you listened to music without connecting every lyric to the story. You made a plan that did not include whether they would approve. Small things, almost insulting in their ordinariness. That is how people come back to themselves, not through a grand rebirth, through groceries, sleep, work, a quiet dinner. A morning when the first thought is not them, then another. Then one day you realize you have not checked in a week. That is darker than revenge, because revenge still keeps them central. Being done removes the throne. That is why the reviewer does not call you frightened. Fear leaves someone huge in your mind. Done returns them to human size, just a person who hurt you, a person you cared about, a person you may still understand, a person who no longer gets administrative control over your nervous system. That is the sentence underneath page 7. They are done, not done feeling, done negotiating, not done remembering, done returning, not done caring, done sacrificing peace to prove care exists. This is where the people around you got confused. Your anger dropped. They thought that meant the boundary was weakening. Wrong. The anger had done its job. Anger is sometimes scaffolding. It helps hold a new boundary up while the structure is still wet. But scaffolding is not the building. Eventually it comes down. The building remains. You stopped being furious. Still did not go back. You stopped talking about what happened. Still did not go back. You could remember good times without collapsing. Still did not go back. That is when they realized the door was not being held shut by emotion. It had become a wall. Quiet, no guards, no threats, no signs saying never return, just architecture. They tried old keys, guilt, nothing, nostalgia, nothing. After everything we've been through, nothing. You've changed. That one almost makes you laugh now. Yes, that was the point. You were supposed to change. What kind of person survives the same lesson and proudly stays identical? You changed. You stopped confusing familiarity with safety. Stopped confusing history with obligation. Stopped confusing someone's access to your past with ownership of your future. That is what they call cold, when they benefited from your warmth being unlimited. The reviewer sees it by page 8. Your behavior gets calmer after the decision. That is important. If this were fear running the show, the pattern would usually become more chaotic. More checking, more second guessing, more desperate attempts to manage the danger. But your life gets quieter, not instantly better, quieter. There are still bad nights, still moments you miss them, still moments you wonder whether you were too hard. Still moments when your body remembers before your mind does. A name, a place, a particular hour. Human memory is dirty like that. It gets on everything, but the center holds. You do not go back to solve the discomfort. You let discomfort exist without turning it into instruction. That is probably the strongest thing in the whole file. Not the exit, the ability to hurt without automatically returning to the source of the hurt. That is maturity nobody celebrates because it looks like nothing. Your phone stays where it is, that is all. But inside that nothing, an entire old pattern starves. No reply, no rescue, no restart, no new season of the same show. Just a phone on a table. Funny how freedom can look so unimpressive. Page 9. Now other people start adjusting, the same ones who were certain you were afraid. Some say you are stubborn, then cold, then selfish, then different. Then eventually the language softens. They're really serious, yes. You were serious before. They just never believed seriousness could survive their disappointment. Then somebody says something even more revealing. They don't even seem angry anymore. Exactly. That is when the room understands. Angry people can be pulled back into the ring. Angry people still want the referee to see the foul. Angry people still want the score corrected. You stopped watching the scoreboard. That is why they cannot reach the old version of you. The old version needed the game to end fairly. The new version realized some games are won by leaving before they finish. Not because you beat anyone, because you stopped losing yourself to participate. That is the shift. The reviewer flips back to page 7 one more time. There is a sentence there everybody else treated as insignificant. Subject stopped asking whether the decision was too harsh. That is the line there. Not subject stopped caring. Not subject no longer experiences fear. Not subject became detached. You stopped asking whether protecting yourself was cruel. That question had controlled you for years. Am I being too harsh? Am I expecting too much? Should I forgive again? What if they really mean it this time? What if leaving makes me just as bad? What if I become the villain? That question kept you in rooms long after love had stopped being the main thing happening there. Then one day the question went silent. You did not decide you were always right. You decided you did not have to prove someone was evil to admit something was bad for you. That is enormous. You can leave a person who has good in them. You can leave a family that loves you badly. You can leave a job where nobody technically broke a rule, but your body is dying by inches. You can leave a friendship built on 10 years of history and 2 years of dread. You can leave without a villain. That is what being done finally taught you. You do not need a monster to justify a door. Sometimes the room is simply no longer yours. People hate that because it gives them nothing to argue with. If you call them cruel, they can defend themselves. If you call them abusive, they can debate definitions. If you say, I hate you, they can point to good memories. But if you say, I do not want this life anymore, where is the counter-argument? There isn't one. Choice is terrifying to people who prefer negotiation. That is what page 7 represents. Choice. Not panic, not collapse, not avoidance. Choice after enough evidence. And choice looks cold when everyone assumed they had a vote. The reviewer finally writes a note in the margin. Not diagnosis, not praise, one sentence. They are not escaping something. They are no longer available for it. That's it. There is the difference. Escape keeps looking backward. Availability looks at the door and decides whether it opens. Yours stopped opening, not for punishment, not to teach a lesson, not so somebody would chase you. It stopped opening because you finally understood access is not proof of love. Sometimes love exists and access still has to end. Sometimes forgiveness exists and distance still has to remain. Sometimes you understand exactly why someone became the way they are and still refuse to be the place where they practice it. That is not fear. That is a boundary after the emotional weather is past. No thunder, no lightning, just a new climate. And the strangest part, you probably do not feel powerful. You probably feel tired. Maybe relieved, maybe sad in a cleaner way. That is normal. Being done does not always feel like victory. Sometimes it feels like grief with no argument left inside it. You miss what could have been, not enough to return. You remember who they were on good days, not enough to forget the bad ones. You understand their pain, not enough to volunteer for more of it. That is the mature part nobody makes posters about. You can hold two truths. They mattered, and they cannot come with you. You loved them, and you are done. No contradiction. That is adulthood. Ugly, expensive adulthood. Page 7 looked boring to everybody else. That is why they missed it. The end of fear did not look like courage. It looked like no longer asking the same question, no longer asking whether you were allowed to leave, no longer asking whether they agreed, no longer asking whether everybody understood. No longer asking whether one more explanation could turn history into something easier to carry. You stopped asking, then you started living. That is why he closed the file. This isn't fear. No, fear still begs the danger to become safe. You stopped begging. They're done. Yes, finally, done.